The last thing Captain Vexel expected to feel, 12 hours from death, was hope, and yet there it was, flickering on her sense display like a cruel joke, a small, unremarkable blue planet, orbited by nothing more advanced than metal cans full of frightened primates. Hope, from a species a galaxy hadn't bothered to notice in 10,000 years. She almost laughed. Almost. Behind her, the viewport showed the Resolute, what was left of it, 12 ships. 12 out of the 208 that had sailed from Kalos shipyards 3 months ago. The rest were debris now, scattered across a dozen systems, burned into the memory banks of every crew member still breathing. The Grath Empire did not take prisoners. The Grath Empire did not negotiate. The Grath Empire simply erased. "Engine core temperature critical," said Tessa, her second in command, her 4 eyes flicking between 3 different readouts at once. "We have maybe 6 hours before the drive coils go into cascade failure. If that happens—" "I know what happens," Vexel said quietly. She had seen it happen to the Ardennes. She had watched a ship the size of a small moon fold on itself and vanish in a flash of white light, taking 11,000 souls with it. She would not watch it happen to her own crew. She stared at the readout of the blue planet. Earth. That was its name, according to the ancient survey logs buried deep in the Resolute's archives. Logs so old they predated the Grath's rise to power. Logs nobody had bothered to update, because nobody had thought this insignificant, unindustrialized world mattered at all. Except now it was the only thing standing between her fleet and oblivion. Every law of the Interstellar Compact, laws older than her grandmother's grandmother, forbade contact with unaligned, pre-warp civilizations. It was considered reckless, dangerous. A species like humanity, seeing starships and alien faces for the first time, might panic, might attack out of fear, might expose the fleet's location to the very enemy hunting them. But the alternative was certain death. "Captain," Tessa said, her voice tight, "you're not seriously considering—" "Open a channel," Vexel said. The bridge went silent. Every crew member turned to look at her. Dorwin, the tactical officer, young Preem, who had lost her entire family unit at the Battle of Kestrel, old Van, who had served 3 captains before her and buried 2 of them. They were all watching her now, waiting to see if their commander had finally broken. "Captain, that is a direct violation of Compact Protocol 7, Tessa said. "If the Grath intercept the signal—" "The Grath will find us in 6 hours regardless," Vexel snapped. Then, softer, "I would rather die reaching for help than die hiding in silence. Open the channel. All frequencies. Every language pattern we have on file." Tessa hesitated 1 more second, then nodded, and her hands moved across the console. The message that went out from the Resolute that day was short, desperate, nothing like the carefully worded diplomatic protocols the Compact had drafted for first contact scenarios. It was simply this: "We are dying. We ask for shelter. We ask for help. We offer no threat and expect none in return." Vexel closed her eyes after it was sent and waited for silence. Waited for the kind of silence that had answered every other cry for help her people had ever sent into the void. The silence a galaxy too busy, too frightened, or too cruel to care. Instead, 3 minutes and 41 seconds later, something happened that had never happened to her before in 23 years of command. Someone answered. "Unknown vessel. This is Cheyenne Mountain Space Operations Center. We read your transmission." The voice was rough, human, thick with an accent her translation matrix struggled to parse. There was a long pause, filled with what she would later learn was the sound of a room full of people staring at each other in stunned disbelief. "We don't know what you are. We don't know why you're here. But if you're hurt, if you need help, you tell us where you are and we will come." Vexel stared at the comm display, her hearts, both of them, hammering against her ribs in a way they hadn't since her first battle. "They said yes," Preem whispered, disbelief written across every line of her young face. "Captain, they said yes." Vexel didn't answer right away. She was thinking about every briefing she had ever received on Earth, every dismissive footnote in the Compact archives, calling humanity primitive, violent, unworthy of contact. She was thinking about how wrong every single one of those reports might turn out to be. "Send them our coordinates," she said finally. "And Tessa, get everyone on stand down from combat stations. If they wanted us dead, they wouldn't have answered at all. What none of them knew yet, what not even the sharpest tactical mind on the bridge could have predicted, was that this single decision, born from desperation and a dying engine core, was about to change everything. Not just for the Resolute, not just for Earth, for the entire galaxy. Because 6 hours later, as the fleet's coils began to shriek with the first warning tremors of catastrophic failure, dozens of aircraft and vessels rose from the blue planet below. Not warships, not weapons, but rescue craft, cargo haulers, anything that could fly, all racing toward 12 broken alien ships full of strangers. And Vextal, watching them come, finally understood that she had just made the most important decision of her life. She simply didn't yet understand why. Commander Elena Garza had exactly 4 minutes to decide whether to risk her career, her reputation, and quite possibly her life. And she used every second of it staring at the largest object she had ever seen suspended above Earth's atmosphere. The alien flagship was massive, easily 3 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull scarred with the black scorch marks of recent battle. Half its running lights were dead. One entire section near the aft had been sheared away as if some enormous hand had simply torn it off. And yet it hung there in orbit, patient, waiting, its remaining 11 escort ships arranged around it in a loose defensive formation that even Garza's untrained eye could tell was more instinct than strategy at this point. These people were exhausted, beaten, barely holding together. "Command wants a decision, Commander," said her pilot, a young lieutenant named Osei, who hadn't stopped sweating since they left the atmosphere. "Do we board, or do we hold position?" Garza thought about her daughter, asleep back in Colorado, blissfully unaware that her mother was currently floating in a shuttle beside the single greatest discovery in human history. She thought about the 1,000 reasons this could go catastrophically wrong. And then she thought about the voice on that first transmission, desperate, honest, afraid. Not the voice of an invader, the voice of someone drowning, reaching for a hand. "We board," Garza said. "Tell the general I take full responsibility." The airlock the aliens opened for them was strange, angular, built for beings both taller and narrower than humans. When it cycled open, Garza found herself face to face, or face to faces, rather, given to beings for eyes, with a woman who could only be described as regal despite her exhaustion. Torn uniform, dry blood at her temple, but her posture, her bearing, spoke of someone used to command. "Captain Vextal," the alien said, extending a 3-fingered hand to what was clearly a gesture she'd studied from human broadcast signals, an attempt at courtesy that struck Garza somewhere deep in the chest. "Thank you for coming." "Commander Elena Garza," she replied, taking the offer hand. It was cool, dry, stronger than it looked. "We got your message. What do you need?" Vextal's 4 eyes studied her for a long moment. Assessing, Garza realized, the way any good commander sizes up someone they don't yet trust but desperately need. "Our drive systems are failing. Our engineers say the coils are beyond repair, that the design flaw causing this failure has existed since before the Compact even standardized warp technology, 600 years ago. If you have engineers who can look at diagnostics, perhaps—" "Show me," Garza said. What happened over the following 6 hours would later be studied, debated, and eventually taught in engineering programs across both species for generations. Dr. Priyanka Shah, the civilian propulsion specialist Garza had brought aboard almost as an afterthought, took one look at the failing drive coil schematics projected in the alien engine room and went very, very quiet. "This can't be right," she muttered, mostly to herself, pulling up diagnostic after diagnostic on the borrowed tablet the aliens had rigged to interface with her equipment. "This literally cannot be right. Your entire species has been running these coils in a fixed resonance pattern for 600 years. The alien chief engineer, a nervous, sharp-featured being named Dorwin, bristled at her tone. "The resonance pattern is standardized across the entire Compact. It is the foundation of warp theory." "It's inefficient," Shah said bluntly. "Look, you're pumping stabilization energy through a static frequency band because that's what the original design called for 6 centuries ago. Nobody's ever adjusted it because nobody's had to. Your ships are usually running at less than 60% load. But you're pushing these coils past 90% trying to outrun something, and the static frequency is causing harmonic feedback. It's not a hull breach or an enemy hit that's about to kill you. It's math. Bad, 600-year-old math nobody ever bothered to update. The engine room went dead silent. That is, Darwin started, then stopped, staring at his own displays as if seeing them for the first time. That is not possible. Our finest engineers across a dozen worlds have studied this system for centuries. Your finest engineers, Shah said not unkindly, have been solving the wrong problem for 600 years because nobody thought to ask if the original assumption was wrong in the first place. We do this constantly. It's kind of our thing. Vextel, watching from the doorway with Garza beside her, felt something shift in her chest. Something between disbelief and a wild, unfamiliar hope. Can it be fixed? Shah was already pulling up calculations, fingers flying. Give me access to the fabrication bay in about 4 hours, and I'll have you a dynamic resonance modulator that'll cut your energy loss by 40% and probably add another 20% to your top speed. It's not even that hard. It's just nobody looked at it sideways before. It was somewhere around hour 3 of that impromptu repair effort, grease-stained human engineers working shoulder to shoulder with alien technicians twice their height, both sides shouting half-translated jargon back and forth across a workbench, that Garza found herself standing beside Vextel, watching the chaos unfold, sharing a thermos of coffee she brought from the shuttle. "What is this?" Vextel asked, sniffing the offered cup with obvious suspicion. "Coffee," Garza said. "It's terrible for you, and we can't stop drinking it." Vextel took a cautious sip. Her 4 eyes widened. "This is—" She took another sip. "This is remarkable." Garza laughed. The first real laugh she'd allowed herself in what felt like days. That's basically the human condition in a cup. Terrible for you and remarkable anyway. Vextel looked at her for a long moment. Something unreadable in that alien expression. On my world, sharing food or drink with a stranger during a crisis is a sacred gesture. It means you trust them not to poison you. It means you consider them, however briefly, family. Then I guess, Garza said, raising her own cup, welcome to the family. Neither of them could have known, in that quiet, unguarded moment above a ruined engine room, that somewhere in the cold, dark 6 light years away, a Grass Scout vessel had just picked up the faint energy signature of a Resolute-class engine core running an experimental new resonance pattern. The hunters had found their trail, and they would not be far behind. 3 weeks. That was how long it took for the impossible to become merely extraordinary, and for the extraordinary to become simply Tuesday aboard the Resolute. Commander Garza stood on the observation deck of the alien flagship, now rechristened at the crew's insistence, with a small hand-painted American flag decal. Beside its original compact markings, a gesture Vextel had found inexplicably moving, and watched the formation of 23 human and alien engineers work in perfect synchronization on the hull below. 3 months ago, these two species hadn't known the other existed. Now, they were finishing the retrofit of an entire battle fleet together. "The Ohio's weapons array is fully integrated," said Preem, Vextel's young tactical officer, reading from a tablet that would have been unrecognizable to her a month prior. Human software, alien hardware, a hybrid interface that had taken engineers from both worlds working around the clock to perfect. Human ballistic technology paired with our targeting matrices. Dr. Shah estimates a 40% increase in accuracy at long range. And morale? Vextel asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. She could hear in the laughter drifting up from the mess hall 3 decks below, human and alien voices tangled together over something Garza's people called poker, a game that had apparently caused 3 separate diplomatic incidents already, all of them, as far as Vextel could tell, hilarious rather than serious. "Higher than I've seen in years," Preem admitted. "Captain, may I speak candidly?" Vextel nodded. "I didn't believe it, at first. When you sent that distress call, I thought we were signing our own death warrants, inviting an unknown species onto our ships." Preem hesitated. "I was wrong. I don't think I've ever been more wrong about anything." Vextel allowed herself a small, rare smile. "I understand the feeling. It hadn't been easy, of course. Not every human trusted the aliens overhead, and Garza had fought her own battles on the ground. Battles fought not with weapons, but with committees, skeptical generals, and a public that oscillated wildly between wonder and terror at the nightly news footage of alien ships in low orbit. They want to shoot first and ask questions never, Garza had told Vexel bitterly. 3 days into the alliance, after a particularly brutal closed-door session with the Joint Chiefs, half of Washington thinks you're here to conquer us. The other half thinks helping you paint a target on our planet. Both fears are reasonable, Vexel had said, and the second one is not wrong. She hadn't told Garza the full truth then, hadn't wanted to burden this fragile new alliance with a fear that had been growing in her chest for days. The certainty, born of 23 years fighting the Graph, that their pursuers did not simply give up, that somewhere out there, a hunter fleet was already turning its bow toward the coordinates of one small, unremarkable blue planet. She told her that night instead on the observation deck, with Earth turning silently beneath them. The Graph will come, Vexel said quietly. Not if, when. They do not forgive prey that escapes them, and they will not forgive a primitive world that dare to help us survive. Garza didn't flinch. Vexel had noticed that about her, the way she absorbed terrible news the way a soldier absorbs orders, filing away the fear to be dealt with later, focusing only on what needed doing now. How long? Weeks, perhaps. A month if we are fortunate. Vexel turned to face her fully. I should have told you the risk before you decided to help us. I am sorry I did not. Would it have changed our answer? Vexel considered the question seriously, the way she considered every question Garza asked her, this small, fierce human who had somehow become, in 3 impossible weeks, something between an ally and a friend. No, she admitted. I don't believe it would have. Then it doesn't matter, Garza said simply. We knew what kind of galaxy we were waving hello to the moment we answered your call. We're not the kind of people who slam the door once we know what's on the other side is scared and hurt, even if what's coming after you is worse. Below them, on the flight deck, Dr. Shaw was running final tests on something the human-alien engineering teams had spent the last week building in secret, a weapons platform neither species could have designed alone, human explosive ordnance technology fused with alien energy-shielding principles, capable of punching through Graph armor plating that had proven impervious to compact weapons for over a century. They were calling it, with the particular dark humor humans seemed to specialize in, the welcome wagon. Your people are strange, Vexel said, watching the test fire arc harmlessly into the void, and I mean that with the deepest respect. You have no idea, Garza said, and honestly, buckle up. It only gets weirder from here. 3 days later, the alarm that had been quietly dreaded by every soul aboard the Resolute finally sounded. Not from Earth's primitive early warning systems, but from the Resolute's own long-range sensors, still the most advanced instruments within 100 light-years of the planet they now called home. Captain, Tessa's voice was tight with barely controlled fear as she turned from her console. We have contacts, multiple contacts, entering the outer system. Configuration matches Graph battle fleet signatures. Vexel closed her eyes for one single, steadying breath. How many ships? Tessa's answer, when it came, made even Vexel's battle-hardened heart skip. All of them, Captain. It's not a scout fleet. It's the entire third Graph armada. Somewhere below, on a planet that had spent its entire history believing it was alone in the universe, humanity was about to discover exactly how large that universe truly was, and exactly how much it was willing to cost them to protect the friends they'd only just made. The sky over Earth turned wrong. That was the only way Commander Garza could describe it later. In the after-action reports nobody outside 3 governments would ever be allowed to read. The sky simply turned wrong. A bruised, shimmering distortion spreading across the upper atmosphere as 340 Graph warships dropped out of faster-than-light transit in a formation so vast it blotted out the stars over 4 continents simultaneously. Sweet Jesus, Osei whispered from the pilot's seat, staring up through the shuttle canopy at ships the size of small cities. Garza didn't have time for awe. Get us back to the Resolute. Now! The Graph flagship, a monstrous vessel nearly 5 kilometers long, its hull a deep bruised violet that seemed to drink the starlight around it, hung at the head of the formation like a blade held to Earth's throat. Its commander's voice, when it finally came through on an open channel, was translated by the Resolute systems into something flat, mechanical, and utterly without mercy. Traitor fleet, primitive world, you harbor enemies of the Graph Empire. Surrender the deserters, and the humiliation of your species will be brief. Refuse, and you will learn why no world has ever survived our displeasure. On the bridge of the Resolute, Vextal stood at the center of the command deck, flanked now by Garza on one side and Tessa on the other. An image, Garza thought, that would have been unthinkable 4 weeks ago. Human and alien, side by side, facing annihilation together. Captain, Dorwin's voice cracked slightly over the comm. Orders? Vextal didn't hesitate. All ships, human and resolute. Assume defensive formation, Kestrel 7. We are not surrendering anyone. General Whitfield's on the line, said the communications officer, a young ensign named Torres who had somehow ended up cross-trained on both human and alien equipment in the space of 3 frantic weeks. He wants to know if we should scramble everything we've got. Everything, Garza said without hesitation, meeting Vextal's eyes. Every ship, every fighter wing, everything the retrofit teams have finished, and half of what they haven't. We fight together, or we don't fight at all. The first wave of the battle was, by any measure, a disaster. The Grath Armada's opening barrage tore through Earth's newly assembled orbital defense line like paper. 3 human destroyers reduced to debris in the first 90 seconds, their crews barely having time to fire a shot. The Resolute itself took a glancing hit that sent Preem sprawling across the deck, blood streaming from a gash above her eye, alarms screaming from every station simultaneously, shields at 60% and falling. Tessa shouted over chaos. Captain, we cannot sustain this rate of... Deploy the welcome wagon platforms. Vextal snapped. All of them, now. It was, Garza would later admit, the single most terrifying 60 seconds of her entire life, watching through viewport as 12 experimental weapons platforms, built in a week by 2 species who barely understood each other's language, launched from the Resolute's flanks and streaked toward a Grath vanguard. For one horrible, suspended moment, nothing happened. Then the lead Grath cruiser's shields buckled, flickered, and failed entirely, the hybrid weapon's unconventional energy signature slipping past defenses calibrated for centuries against known compact weaponry, and the ship's forward section erupted in a silent, brilliant flash of light. The Grath fleet, Garza realized with a jolt of savage satisfaction, had absolutely no idea what had just hit them. Direct hit, Torres shouted. We got a direct hit on a Grath cruiser. Oh my God, we actually... Don't celebrate yet. Vextal cut in, her eyes locked on the tactical display, where the remaining Grath Armada was already adjusting, already recalculating, already turning the full weight of 300 warships toward the source of this unexpected resistance. They will not be surprised twice. She was right. The next 20 minutes were the worst of Garza's life. The Resolute's bridge lit by strobing damage alerts, the deck shuddering under repeated impacts, human and alien voices shouting over each other in a desperate symphony of survival. 2 more human ships were lost. An entire Resolute escort vessel, the Kestrel's Hope, went dark and silent, taking 60 crew members with it, alien and human both. 3 engineers from Shah's own team had transferred aboard just that morning to help calibrate its weapon systems. Garza felt that loss like a physical blow. She saw it reflected in Vextal's face, too, a grief that transcended species, transcended the 3 short weeks they'd known each other. We're losing, Preem said quietly, blood still trickling down her face, her voice hollow with fear she was clearly fighting to control. Captain, we are losing. Vextal turned to look at her young tactical officer, and then at Garza, and then out at the burning wreckage scattered across low Earth orbit. Human and alien debris tangled together in a way that felt somehow unbearably symbolic. We are not losing, Vextal said, and there was something in her voice that cut to the panic on the bridge like a blade. We are adapting. There's a difference in my new friends. She glanced at Garza with something fierce and grateful in her 4 eyes. Have taught me that difference is everything. She turned to the comm station. Get me Dr. Shah. Now, I want to know what else is sitting in that fabrication bay that we haven't tried yet. Because 3 decks below, in a workshop that had barely stopped smoking since the battle began, Priyanka Shah and a team of exhausted human and alien engineers were already elbow-deep in the guts of a half-finished project neither species could have imagined a month prior. Something that, if it worked, might just be the thing that turned an unwinnable war into a fighting chance. The Grath Armada didn't know it yet, but they had made a catastrophic mistake in ever assuming this fight would be easy. Dr. Priyanka Shah had exactly 11 minutes to finish something that, under any sane engineering timeline, should have taken 11 days. Talk to me. Vextel's voice crackled to the workshop comm, tight with controlled urgency that had become the background music of the last half hour. Whatever you're building, I need it now, not 11 minutes from now. It'll work in 11 minutes, or it'll kill everyone in a 2-kilometer radius in 10. Shah snapped back, hands moving in a blur across the modified alien fabrication console, sweat plastering her hair to her forehead. Beside her, Dorwin worked with the same frantic intensity, alien fingers flying across a keyboard clearly not built for them, translating Shah's shouted instructions into precise engineering language the fabricator required. This is a harmonic disruptor built from your shield technology and our microwave emitters. If it works, it'll scramble every targeting system in a graph formation for about 90 seconds. If it doesn't, then we're no worse off than we already are. Dorwin finished grimly, working. Above them, the battle had entered its most desperate hour. The human fighter wings, nimble, fast, flown by pilots who had trained their entire careers for combat against other humans and were now improvising against alien war machines with a mixture of raw talent and pure stubbornness, had bought precious time, weaving between graph point-of-fence fire and patterns their own commanders hadn't authorized and their alien allies had never seen before. They fly like they have nothing to lose, Tessa observed from the Resolute's bridge, watching a squadron of human fighters execute a maneuver that should have gotten all of them killed, and instead took out a Graph escort ship's entire weapons battery. They don't, Vexel said quietly. That's their home down there. Everything they love is on that planet. It was, in that moment, the single most frightening and most inspiring thing Vexel had ever witnessed in 23 years of war, watching a species she'd known for barely a month throw themselves into a battle they had no logical reason to fight, for allies they'd met only weeks ago, with ferocity that made even the grass-disciplined ranks hesitate. But ferocity alone would not be enough. The numbers were still catastrophic. 6 more human ships lost, 2 Resolute vessels crippled beyond repair. And now the Graph flagship itself was moving, its massive bulk turning with terrible, unhurried purpose toward a Resolute's position, its main weapons array charging with visible, pulsing glow that every soul aboard the bridge recognized as the prelude to something final. Captain, Torres's voice cracked, flagship weapons at 90% charge. If that thing fires on us at this range. I know what it means, Vextel said. She looked at Garza, standing steady beside her despite the alarms, despite the smoke curling from a ruptured conduit near the science station, despite everything. Elena, if this goes badly... It's not going to go badly, Garza said, with a stubbornness that Vexel had come to recognize as uniquely, wonderfully human. Shah, talk to me. 30 seconds. Shah's voice was ragged, desperate. I need 30 more seconds. The Graph flagship did not give them 30 seconds. Its main weapon fired, a lance of superheated plasma that tore through space toward the Resolute with a speed no evasive maneuver could hope to outrun. Vexel felt her heart stop, felt Garza's hand close around her arm a grip that would leave bruises, felt the entire bridge crew brace for an impact that would end everything they built together in 3 impossible, extraordinary weeks. And then the human destroyer Montana threw itself into the weapon's path. It happened in less than 2 seconds. The Montana's captain, a grizzled veteran named Chun who had spent the entire battle coordinating defensive fire from a position half a kilometer off the Resolute's bow, made a decision that would be studied and honored for generations on 2 different worlds. Full thrust, directly into the path of a weapon built to annihilate a ship 100 times the Montana size. The explosion lit up low Earth orbit like a second sun. No! Vextel whispered, watching the Montana's icon vanish from the tactical display, watching 230 human lives extinguished in an instant to buy the Resolute, to buy her a handful of seconds. No, no! Captain, Shah's voice cut through the grief, sharp and urgent. Disruptors online. Firing now. The device Shah and Dorwin had built together. Human ingenuity fused with alien technology, born from 3 weeks of friendship neither species had planned for, activated with soundless pulse that swept outward across the Graph formation like a wave. And every targeting system in the Graph Armada, from the smallest fighter to the massive flagship itself, went dark simultaneously. Their weapons are offline. Torres shouted, disbelief and desperate hope warring in her voice. Captain, their entire formation just went dark. They can't target anything they can't. Now! Vexel's voice rang across every channel, human and alien alike, carrying a command that both species understood instinctively. All ships, all weapons, concentrate fire on the flagship. This is our moment. Do not waste it. What followed was less a battle than a reckoning. Human and resolute ships, moving in a coordination that shouldn't have been possible after only 3 weeks of alliance, pouring every remaining weapon they had into a Grath armada suddenly catastrophically blind. The flagship's shields, weakened by the disruptor's pulse, buckled under the combined assault of alien plasma cannons and human missile batteries, working in concert for the first time in history. On the bridge, Vexel watched the tide of a war that had seemed unwinnable 10 minutes ago begin, impossibly, to turn, and somewhere beneath the roar of battle and the grief of the Montana's crew still raw in her chest, she felt something else stirring. Something she hadn't felt in 23 years of fighting the Grath. She felt, for the first time, that they might actually win. The Grath flagship surrender signal came through 11 minutes after its shields finally collapsed, a stiff, formal transmission demanding terms, as though the ship issuing hadn't just watched 2/3 of the Third Armada reduced to drifting wreckage by a species its own intelligence reports had dismissed as barely worth cataloging. On the Resolute's bridge, Grath Fleet Commander Coulter's image flickered to life on the main view screen, a towering, armor-plated being whose composure, Vexel noted with grim satisfaction, had cracked considerably since their last exchange. Behind him, she could see his own bridge crew, stunned, some visibly wounded, all of them staring at readouts that told a story their doctrine said should have been impossible. "You have won this engagement," Coulter said, each word clearly costing him something. "The Grath Empire does not ask for mercy. State your terms." The bridge went quiet. Every eye, human and alien, turned to Vexel. She thought about the Montana and Captain Chun and the 230 souls who would never see their homes again. She thought about the Kestrel's hope and the 60 crew members lost in the war's opening minutes. Human and resolute intermingled in depth the way they had lived these past 3 weeks, as one crew rather than two. She thought about 23 years of running, of watching the Grath Empire erase world after world that dared to resist it, and how easy, how justified it would be to demand the same erasure in return. Then she looked at Garza, standing beside her, exhausted, soot-streaked, alive. "Commander Garza," Vexel said quietly, "this is your world. These are your terms to set, not mine." Garza was silent for a long moment, staring at the image of the Grath commander who had, less than an hour ago, been prepared to burn her planet to ash. "Stand down your remaining forces," Garza said finally, her voice steady despite everything. "Every ship, full withdrawal from this system. In exchange, we won't pursue the survivors, and we'll extend medical assistance to any Grath crew too damaged to make the journey home." Coulter's armored face registered something that might, on a human, have been shock. "You offer us aid. After this." "We offer everyone aid," Garza said. "That's kind of the whole point of the last 3 weeks. This is not victory," Coulter said slowly, as though working through an equation that refused to balance. "Victory is domination. Victory is making certain your enemy never rises again to threaten you." "No," Vexel said, stepping forward, and for the first time in the entire exchange, she allowed herself to smile, small, tired, but genuine. "Victory is making certain you never have to fight this battle again, because your enemy no longer wants to be your enemy at all. My people took a long time to learn that lesson. Commander Coulter, it took meeting humanity to finally understand it." The Grath fleet withdrew within the hour, their remaining ships limping into faster-than-light transit under a truce neither species had believed possible that morning. Behind them, they left the battlefield scattered with wreckage, a graveyard, but also, strangely, something like a monument. The weeks that followed were, in their own way, as extraordinary as the battle itself. Earth's governments, forced by circumstance into the fastest diplomatic transformation in human history, extended a formal charter of alliance to the Resolute and, through them, to whatever remained of the shattered compact worlds still resisting Grath expansion. Reconstruction teams, human and alien, working side by side the way they'd learned during those desperate weeks of preparation, began rebuilding what the battle had destroyed, in orbit and on the ground both. Even the Graph, in the month that followed, sent a tentative delegation, not to negotiate surrender terms, as their doctrine demanded, but to ask, haltingly, uncertainly, what humanity's peace actually required of them. The answer, delivered by Commander Garza herself in a message broadcast across a dozen systems, surprised the entire galaxy. Rebuild what was broken. Treat your neighbors as you'd want to be treated. That's all. That's the whole price. On the observation deck of the Resolute, repaired now, its scars visible but no longer raw, Vextal stood beside Garza one final time before the human commanders transferred back to full-time planetary duty. Below them, Earth turned in its slow, patient orbit, unaware and aware all at once of how thoroughly its place in the galaxy had just been rewritten. "I have spent 23 years fighting the Graph," Vextal said quietly, convinced that the only answer to their cruelty was to become strong enough to match it. "I believed strength meant weapons, ships, fear. And now," Garza asked, "now I understand that the strongest thing I have ever witnessed was a starship captain named Chin choosing to die, so that strangers he'd known for 3 weeks might live. I understand that strength is not what you're willing to destroy. It's what you're willing to protect, and how much of yourself you're willing to give away to protect it." Vextal turned to face her. "Your species terrified the Graph today, Commander Garza, not because of your weapons, because you offered us peace when you had every reason to leave us to die, and then you offered the people who tried to kill you the exact same mercy an hour later. There is nothing in the galaxy more dangerous than that, and nothing more precious." Garza smiled, tired but genuine, and raised a thermos of coffee she'd carried up with her, the same battered old thermos, Vextal realized, from that very first night 3 weeks ago. "To new friends," Garza said, "and to the terrible coffee that started it all." Vextal took the offered cup, the gesture no longer strange to her at all, and drank. Months later, when Vextal finally returned to what remained of the Compact's governing council to deliver her report on the events at Earth, she was asked more than once to summarize what exactly had happened on that small, previously insignificant blue planet. What precisely had allowed a pre-warp civilization to not only survive an encounter with the Graph Empire, but to defeat one of its largest armadas and, more improbably still, to convert that same enemy into a hesitant, wary partner. In peace, she thought of the Montana, of Chun, of Shah and Dorwin working side by side in a smoking engine bay, of a thermos of terrible coffee shared between two strangers on the edge of catastrophe. "They are not the strongest species I have ever encountered," Vextal told the council, choosing her words with the same care she'd once used to plot battle strategy. "They are not the most advanced or the wealthiest or the most numerous, but they're the most dangerous species I have ever met, and also the most precious, because humanity does not measure its strength by what it can destroy. It measures it by what it refuses to let die, by who it refuses to leave behind." She paused, remembering the look on Coulter's face as he received humanity's terms of peace, bewildered, humbled, and for the first time in the memory of anyone aboard his ship, afraid in a way that had nothing to do with weapons. "The galaxy has spent centuries fearing the Graph Empire," Vextal said. "I would suggest, respectfully, that we have all been watching the wrong horizon. The most dangerous species in this galaxy is also the one most willing to save it. We should count ourselves fortunate that they chose to answer when we called.